Hello buddy, it's Wyvern here with another bit of Total War Warhammer 2 quick match gameplay. This time around we are on the Warpstone Mine playing as the forces of the Tomb Kings against the forces of the Vampire Counts. And for this matchup, well, I wanted to take things a little bit differently. Ever since Arcann's Tombblade really got nerfed and reworked way back when, this was shortly after the release of Tomb Kings, this matchup has swung from basically an auto win for Tomb Kings to being a match largely considered advantageous to the Vampire Counts. Vampire Counts have a lot of ways of compromising your backlines. They can really out-attrition you. Their infantry tends to trade very well into your infantry, and arguably trades better ever since the Graveguard buffs, or reworks I should say. And of course they've got some great mobility and all that stuff. For this build here, I wanted to try something a little bit different. Traditionally, what I like to do against Vampire Counts is bring a bit of a Death Ball. Bring Hyrule Titans, bring a War Sphinx, bring Arcann, that sort of thing. Some Necrotects. But for this, we are going to be going for a melee rush. We are going to be looking to match the Vampire Counts sword on sword, or spear on spear, lance on lance, halberd on halberd, I guess. But I wanted to do things a little bit differently. Rather than going for monsters, we are actually going to be bringing some Necropolis Knights. And of course, one of the big problems with Necropolis Knights, and really taking a cab fight against Vampire Counts in general, is the fact that Vampire Counts have very good support. They essentially have infantry support on demand with zombie summons. So for that reason, we need a lot of infantry support to hopefully compensate and offset that zombie summon advantage. So going over the build here, we are going to be rocking Settra the Imperishable. Settra's a great combatant. He's a very, very powerful duelist. Has solid combat stats, decent armor, good HP pool. He's got Neru's Incantation of Protection, which Vampire Counts do struggle to bust through. We do have Usef's Incantation of Desiccation for that armor debuff, as well as Joff's Incantation of Cursed Blades, which is a pretty insane boost to damage output to a specific target. We also do have Wrath of Dra, as well as, of course, the Blessed Blade of Dra, which allows me to debuff a key target pretty easily. Now, unfortunately, we are getting Spirit Leech almost immediately here. But besides that, we do have a Sphinx of Usef towering overhead. This is an absolutely brutal beastie for Vampire Counts to deal with. It's got magic attacks to counter basically any of their units. Fire, which does bonus damage to most of their large targets. And of course, AP anti-large just devastates even Blood Knights. Alongside that, Necrotech to provide support, because all of our cavalry does count as a construct, and this bad boy on a chariot will hopefully help mulch some of those zombies and infantry, and does provide all of my constructs with an extra 5 melee attack and a little bit of damage, provides them the enemy with a melee attack debuff and weakness to fire, and then he does allow me to heal my key units. Besides that, we do have 2 units of Necropolis Knights with halberds, a whole bunch of Skelly Spears, and finally the Kepra Guard as a bit of an anchor and a stable holding force. Now for my opponent, he has gone with a fairly conventional Vampire Count build, looking to sort of swarm over me, though it's a bit more infantry heavy than what I'm used to. We do see Manfred over here rocking and rolling on his Hellsteed. He is going to try to dive in on my Necrotect here, because I try to get a bit of a cheeky charge there. Really shouldn't have done that, you know, but oh well. And Arcann does have Spirit Leech, Zombie Summon, as well as the Invocation of the Heck, and of course he does have Master of Black Arts and his Sword of Unholy Power. Besides that, we do 2 White Kings, both of which are completely stock except for a single Scab's Wrath on that White King over there. Front line is made up of Skelly Boys, Skelly Spears, and a few Graveguard with Great Weapons are backing them up. But I think that's a bit of an incorrect choice. I think Graveguard with Great Weapons are completely unnecessary against Tomb Kings. It does help a little bit against constructs because they have AP, but really you're perfectly fine with normal Graveguard, and normal Graveguard can soak fire a little better with their shields. There's also a Corpse Cart with Unholy Lodestone, so any infantry fight that goes down is going to be very favorable to my opponent. Some bats are in the skies patrolling overhead, and we do have 2 units of Blood Knights providing a pretty hefty anti-large contingent. And I'm actually kind of trying to get a flank here and trying to isolate them and take a fight further away from my opponent's main line. We do manage to take one of those Blood Knights down, but a bit of a misplay here, because in the process of trying to catch my opponent in isolation, my opponent actually isolates me, and so big misplay there on my part. He's catching me out with infantry here. He's got the bats up in the air, and of course bats can interdict me, which would not be ideal. Now I do catch that zombie summon just in time and manage to squeak away there, but still not ideal, and my opponent definitely doing a good job here of splitting my army in 2. So that is definitely not looking good. Now over here I'm getting a bit of a cheeky charge in with the Necrotech, running over a few Graveguard with Great Weapons, but really probably shouldn't be doing this stuff. This guy is pretty nippy. He does have a hefty 74 speed, I believe, and so he's able to squeak away from most of these enemy troops. But Blood Knights still do have 70 speed. They'll hit him on the charge. And in the meantime over here, we are getting some engagements in. Spears going in against my opponent's infantry. It's going to be a bit of a slugfest over here. But my opponent has a massive advantage on this flank over here, because as you can see, he's got all of his heroes here. He's got his bats, his Blood Knights, his Graveguard with Great Weapons, Corpse Cart with Unholy Lodestone, and although the Necrotech is trying to soften up some of this infantry here, and they'll do an okay job of it. Chariots are obviously very good at running over, especially lightly armored infantry, non-AP chariot here. it's still going to be a bit of a problem. Now over here, unfortunately, I did miss micro a little bit with the Sphinx of Usef, and it's actually going to get caught out here by the Blood Knight, so massive misplay there. 100 armor isn't really going to protect it, and it's taking some insane damage here. And I'm actually going to be forced to commit. Now my opponent here dropping a Spirit Leech on Settra the Imperishable. I am going to drop a Restore on the Sphinx, and we are going to stand and fight. In the meantime, the Necropolis Knight's pouring on forward. My opponent does drop a summon, but it is not in time. The Necropolis Knight's surging forward, getting that engagement. And of course, keep in mind, Necropolis Knights do have poison, so all these Blood Knights are going to be debuffed. They're going to be slower, they're going to be weak, hitting less powerfully, and of course Settra is in there providing his own support. Settra provides, of course, the My Will Be Done buff, which is a hefty +5 melee attack and melee defense all around him, buffing all these troops up to the moon. Narrow's Incantation Protection going down Necro Sphinx, making it a very difficult target for my opponent's non-magic damage dealing troops. And although the bats are interdicting the Necropolis Knights, they are suffering pretty badly here, though you can see the Joust Incantation of Cursed Blades kind of wasted because we are not really able to hit these Blood Knights. Blood Knights in the meantime are trying to circle around and get a hefty rear charge here, and they do succeed in doing so. Obviously, with no infantry support, we are in a bit of a grim predicament here. In the meantime, White King here, pounding away on Settra. Settra popped the Blessed Blade, but Spirit Leech going down as well. Definitely not a great spot in life for me. And of course, Invocation of Attack going down, healing some of these key targets, and really the most key targets here. But we are countering with Usef's Incantation of Desiccation, dropping these Blood Knights to a pitiful 0 stats, which is pretty insane. In the meantime, over here on this flank, infantry fight is going down. Now, obviously, the Skelly Boys are going to conquer the Skeleton Spears, no doubt about it. Over here, though, Kepler Guard is slugging out with the Skeleton Warriors and will be able to grind out this fight over here, no problemo. While in the meantime over here, these spears are hoofing it over here, trying to get in position to help and make a sort of last-ditch effort there. Settra over here engaging tooth and nail, trying to fight these Blood Knights, and the curse is going to go down because we do drop below half HP, and it's perfect timing, hitting these key targets. Now, obviously not great that Settra's below half HP, but being able to whittle down these Blood Knights is definitely a win. And Necropolis Knights still doing insane amounts of damage. We do get a little bit of an explosion there. And now my opponent's actually in a bit of a pickle, because if we look at the situation here, yes, he does have balance power advantage. Yes, he's got this infantry support, but his Blood Knights who cycled around trying to get us around are now isolated. They are separated, they are backed up against the board edge, they're whittled down in an insane amount, and their support is disappearing. So over here, the Necro Sphinx beats down on some Skelly Boys. A lot of these zombies are basically gone, and we are going to be able to break free. The spears are going to be able to bog down this infantry a little bit, and now we are going to be able to engage on these Blood Knights in a clean engagement. And with Settra's buffs in the fight, this is something a lot of people forget about these fights, where when you've got these 1v1 matchups, and yeah, Blood Knights dominate a lot, but the support you can get from, say, Settra, who's providing that +5 melee attack and defense, and then you've got a Necro Sphinx in there, and you've got the debuffs from the Necrotech, of course, and suddenly we are in a much better position. Now, you can see Restore going down on the Necropolis Knights. It does heal them, so we are actually able to get a bit of healing there, and these Blood Knights are now crumbling, they're routing, they're fleeing. Of course, the attempt here, trying to snipe out Necrotech, my opponent trying to get rid of this guy, makes sense. But in turn, the Necro Sphinx is going to get a few nasty swings there. And my opponent is not able to squeak away. These Blood Knights are getting pounded on. They're getting dragged into the muck. And the Necropolis Knights just tearing them to shreds. They do have some pretty hefty stats, especially when my Will Be Done is active on them. And those Blood Knights are not going to be long for this world. Necro Sphinx, in the meantime, pounding away on Manfred, and the Necrotech, of course, is able to keep running shop here, up to 76 kills, just able to run amok among these troops. And over here, Kepler Guard continues doing its duty, dragging down the foe. Now, there are Graveyard with great weapons here at this point. Prior to this, the Kepler Guard hadn't lost almost no models, if any models, because that regen is so powerful against the Vampire Counts, who don't tend to have the best stats, so they do more trickle damage, and in that situation, regen is very powerful, but the Graveyard with the great weapons are now offsetting that, so that's definitely a little bit of a problem. Skeleton Warriors, in the meantime, slugging it out over here, but of course we will get another Realm of Souls soon, and that will trigger a heal for Kepler Guard, as well as all these Skeleton Spears. Another unit of Skeleton Spears moving into the Grinder just to slow my opponent down, and here in the pits, we are seeing the last of my opponent's Blood Knights going down, and that is a big win, because once those Blood Knights are gone, my opponent's only mobility is going to be Manfred. And Manfred is not a great duelist. He is not a great combatant. He does not want to be in a position in life where he must duel a Necro Sphinx and these Necropolis Knights and all that sort of stuff. Now, unfortunately, though, these zombies do continue marching in. Manfred is sticking around, doing quite a bit of damage. We do pop Narrow's Incantation Protection there, but we are actually being dragged into the muck here. I do pop some Ushabti summons here, trying to whittle down these White Kings. White Kings, of course, are infantry, so they do suffer from that anti-infantry bonus the Ushabti have, and so we will be prioritizing them. I figured that at this stage, the biggest threat for my opponent was really trying to get rid of these two White Kings and get rid of Manfred. If I can get rid of Manfred, the rest of these troops can be cycle charged down, isolated, and torn apart, especially by my Necro Sphinx and the Chariot. This Chariot, not the best chariot out there, but, you know, good enough. Over here in this fight that I keep ignoring, keeps going on and on. The Kepler Guard slugging it out with the Graveyard with the weapons. They will most likely win this fight because that regen is just so powerful in these sustained infantry engagements. And of course, the Graveguard do not have any support except the occasional Lore of Vampires passive hitting them whenever Manfred casts. So not getting huge buffs there. The Graveguard are being locked out by these Skeleton Spears. And over here, we are kind of dragging these Vikings into the muck. Unfortunately, the Necropolis Knights are getting overwhelmed. Skeleton Spears charging into the fray here. Settra very near death. Same with the Necrotech, very, very poor in their HP department. And the Ushabti are not going to last forever. They are going to disintegrate eventually. We are trying to get as much damage here as we can, but my opponent, being Manfred, he's got a lot of summons up his sleeve. He's able to bog down my Necropolis Knights. My cavalry contingent is basically wiped at this stage, and I've got no way, really, of extricating them. And, of course, no way of healing them either, because we've used both of our heals on the Necrotech. Settra is going to try to escape here. He is taking some swings from that very annoying White King, but at least the Sphinx of Usev does make Manfred reconsider his life decisions and back the hell away. Kepler Guard, in the meantime, continues winning over here. Skeleton Warriors coming in trying to help the Grave Guard, but if we look here, just a second ago, these guys were on 66 models compared to about 80 or so, and now they've dragged the fight back in their favor, which is pretty insane, showing just how powerful the Kepler Guard really is, because they're a fairly cheap unit in comparison to the Graveyard. The weapons are 950. These guys are like 1,050, I believe. So very close cost-wise. Now over here, the Necrotech, bit mauled. Settra being pursued by this very angry White King, who's going in trying to cut him down. But we're having none of that. We're going to back off. As you can see, Balance of Power is now decisively in my opponent's favor. He has gotten rid of my remaining Necropolis Knights. Unfortunately, I don't really have anything to quickly shut down this infantry, and they are getting consistently healed by that lodestone, which is very, very annoying. We do try to snipe out the White King here, but he is getting a little bit of support, which is rather annoying, not going to lie. We do manage to snipe him out, so he does topple to the earth there. Sphinx of Usev putting him in the gutter before getting caught by a very big tree, as it tends to do. Necrotech, in the meantime, Benny hilling around as the Necrosphinx does pile through, and of course it can shrug off a lot of this infantry damage. It does have very good combat stats, so Graveguard is not going to hit very consistently. But Manfred, unfortunately, going in after my Necrotech, trying to snipe that poor bugger out. Necrosphinx is doing its best to protect him, trying to get that attack in, but the very annoying bald boy is going to get off the ground and escape, and so that is a little aggravating there. But the Necrosphinx has plenty of other targets and decides to teach its White King a lesson, sending him flying and just cleaving through this horde of infantry. Up to 63 kills now, doing some major work. Basically an unstoppable juggernaut for the vampire counts. But of course, my opponent knows that if he can isolate and remove the remaining troops here, he can potentially dispatch the Necrosphinx in due time. Now, Master of Black Arc's going down as well, though Manfred takes about 500 HP shaved off there, which is just brutal stuff. And at this stage, my opponent doesn't have much left. He's got the White King, he's got the Corpse Cart, and he's got Manfred, whereas it does look pretty grim because there's just so much infantry on the field. But if I can snipe out some of these key targets, the Corpse Cart, the White King, then my opponent's going to be in a bad position. This infantry can't prevent cycle charging from this big old War Sphinx. So over here, we are going to pop Blessed Blade of Tra, as well as the Nair's Incantation of Protection. Gives Settra a tiny smidgen of healing, though not very much. Corpse Guard, in the meantime, with its regen, actually suffering here under the blows of the Sphinx of Usev. Keep in mind, that fire damage, getting you bonus work against the Corpse Guard. Over here, Settra is kind of cycle charging a little bit. Bit of a misplay here. I really should have pulled Settra away and just kept him out of this fight. So that is not what you want to be doing in life. But we do still have one explosion left. I was trying to bait the Graveguard into a Wrath of Drop. Failed to do so. In the meantime, Kepler Guard is moving. They are, quote-unquote, moving fast. So that doesn't mean very much when they're this exhausted. 284 kills. Speaks of great deeds done. Settra over here does slug it out and almost brings Manfred down. Bring him to the very cusp of death. One more swing might do it, but he misses. And Settra does fail to kill that fool there, and with that, Manfred is able to take back to the skies and pops an Invocation on the neck, bring himself back up to a hefty amount of HP. Very, very annoying stuff. In the meantime, the Corpse Card has healed itself a good amount. That is self-regen and plus its own healing aura, really doing quite some work. And Settra, of course, doesn't have much healing, unlike Manfred. So Settra is now in a bit of a pickle. He does pop the Nair's Incantation of Protection, my cheapest spell, and gives me a tiny smidgen of healing. Certainly nothing to write home about. But the Sphinx now diving in on the corpse cart, looking to focus it out, cut my opponent's infantry healing, and despite the distractions, it does bring that bugger down. And with that, this infantry is now unsupported. Settra does get in here, and he is going to smack this fool around. Manfred getting cut down. He does have hunger healing him, but Settra is having none of it. Dishing out some divine justice there, and though his HP is very, very low, the high leadership on these Tomb King Lords really does keep him in the fight, prevents that crumbling from taking effect, and so Settra is able to stick around on incredibly poor HP. White King once again getting sent flying as the Sphinx continues its parade of slaughter here, doing some excellent work. Cutting through these Graveguard. Bit of a wasted effort here. Really doesn't need to be fighting these guys. I was trying to get it in on the White King, but it gets distracted repeatedly. In the meantime, Manfred here trying to snipe out Settra. But at this point, my opponent probably doesn't have the Winds of Magic for Spirit Leech, so I basically just have to wait for him to try to come down. But I don't really think he has a chance. The Sphinx does go in. It manages to snipe out the White King here, beating him down to 242 HP. Settra, though, getting charged from the skies by Manfred. Manfred going for the jugular there, and it is going to be a bit of a duel here. The Necro Sphinx diving in to protect its Lord and Liege there, and driving away Manfred. But in the meantime, Settra is on his last legs. You can see the Kepra Guard fighting tooth and nail, even as they do crumble, getting swarmed by Graveguard, skeletons, and all that trash. Settra here crumbling as a scything blow goes down from the Sphinx. But there is no protecting Settra here. Manfred is going to dive in, smack Settra from behind, and the imperishable does perish, falling in the name of Nehekara. But it doesn't matter now. The War Sphinx is going to plow through. It does dive in, doing some insane work. 134 kills on this bad boy as it kills off Manfred, and my opponent's army does crumble, snaring a victory from the jaws of defeat for the Tomb Kings. I do say from the jaws of defeat, there was a lot of HP left on that Sphinx, no doubt about it. But it was quite the tight fight. It came right down to the wire. Obviously, most of my army got annihilated. There was definitely some misplay on my part. Zero to debate there. The fact that I separated my cavalry from the main engagement, trying to get a cheeky snare on my opponent, ended up being a massive misplay, because my opponent was actually able to turn that on its head and get me isolated, and I just underestimated those summons and the speed of the infantry response from the vampire counts, and it nearly honestly cost me the game. If the Necropolis Knights had gotten ground down there, that would have probably been game over. But the Necropolis Knights held that extra armor they got in the recent patches, really holding up against the Skelly Trash support and against the Bats. They were able to decimate the Blood Knights, just tearing a bloody swath through them. That support from Settra, of course, and the Necrotect and the Sphinx just coming in clutch. And my opponent just didn't have the anti-large resources to kill these guys fast enough. And once all was said and done, the Necro Sphinx were made. And the Blood Knights were gone, and there was no tools to deal with the Necro Sphinx. And this is one of the reasons I like bringing more cavalry against the Tomb Kings. I think you could probably cut these White Kings, downgrade these guys to normal Graveguard, and you'd probably be in a better position. You could fit one more Blood Knight in there, and I think you'd be in a stronger position for taking on the Tomb Kings. Besides that, the Kepra Guard, absolute MVPs. Just cleaving through so much trash. 342 kills is no mean feat, especially when you consider the fact that not only did they kill multiple dirt cheap infantry, which probably was worth, you know, about 300 gold, 400 gold a piece. So you're looking at about 700 gold generated there. They could beat an entire unit of Graveyard Gravemen by themselves, generating insane amounts of value. And they were still around and kicking at the end game. So really just an excellent unit, showing their mettle in this battle, and really just absolutely awesome. Settra, of course, great. Necrotect did all right. It's tough. The chariots don't do AP damage, so they're not as good against cavalry as some of the honestly more busted chariots, like the Noble Chariot or the Beastmen chariots, which are just insane with their AP values. But still, he was able to dish out some hurt and get some clutch heals, and of course provide support, that extra damage output that he grants these guys, and of course buffs to add damage output for the Sphinx, and the debuffs he applies to the enemy were crucial. My opponent's Blood Knights were losing 9 melee attack from the Necrotect's debuffs, which is pretty nifty. Now, would I recommend this build? I'm not sure. I liked the Necropolis Knights with Halberds. They were a lot of fun. They both gained a Chevron here. They did a lot of work, no doubt about it. But ultimately, I'm not sure they're better than going for Death Ball. Death Ball kind of feels more forgiving and idiot-proof. But I did like the Necropolis Knights, and I didn't think they performed too badly. But I will say the jury, at least in my opinion, is still out. Not entirely sure. I think with better play, they could have done better, even. Had I kept the fight closer to my main line. But not entirely sure. Then they might have had to fight with those Graveyard Ravens that could have turned things around once again. Regardless, well played to NN Black Dead here, who did bring quite a cool build. Like I said, my only main critique is honestly ditch the White Kings, downgrade these Graveguard, get a 3rd unit Blood Knights, and I think you'd be Gucci. You can really, at that point, you just crump almost everything. Like, I'm personally partial to the Dire Pack in this matchup, but you really don't need it. And you can go for this wider infantry-centric build, but I just don't think you need the Graveguard, don't think you need the White Kings. I think you're better off bringing an extra unit of Blood Knights. Just have a little bit more large. If there had been a little bit more anti-large at the end game, if 1 unit of Blood Knights had been around and kicking, when those Necropolis Knights were gone, that could have spelled doom for the Sphinx of Usef. It would have at that point not been able to get away. Same with Settra and the Necrotect. It would have been much more difficult for them to get away. But that's just my 2 cents there. Well played to my opponent. Hopefully you guys did enjoy the video. I know my updates have not been consistent lately, and I know I haven't been getting up much of anything. I will be trying to hopefully get more stuff up in the coming weeks, though right now my real life scheduling is a bit difficult, guys. I simply don't have the time, and I'm actually kind of juggling between the new apartment and my current residence, and so I only have my computer at my current residence, so I'm not actually able to work on videos a lot of the time, or even play Total War Warhammer a lot of the time. So life's a little difficult in that sense. So I do apologize that I just haven't been putting out content as consistently as I usually try to do, but I'm hoping that in the coming weeks, once I'm fully moved into the new apartment, have my desktop moved over there, I will be able to just start kicking out videos on a more consistent basis again. So I do apologize, do appreciate you guys for your patience. As always, I really appreciate you guys for all of your support and all the nice comments and advice and question and all that you guys leave me. I really do appreciate it. And as usual, if you've got anything to post, don't hesitate to post it on below. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say. And I will see you all in the next one. Wyvern out.